The next speaker that we have with us is again somebody who's a doyen in the field of industry. Um, he's done a bachelor in physics, then went to IIT for engineering, and then I think the common theme is many of them have studied at Harvard. Then he went to Harvard Business School. He has been the executive director of the holding company of the Tata Group, that is Tata Sons. So all the things that you enjoy, the Tata IPL, all the things that we enjoy about the Tata Group, the holding company of that, he's been an executive director there. He's been the chairman of the board of directors for Castrol. He's been the chairman of Unilever Arabia. He's on numerous boards. He's the man who's advised everyone from Ratan Tata to people who are on this list and beyond. It gives me great pleasure to be able to welcome somebody who's authored 18 books. That's more than the books some of us have read. And he's somebody who's taken out time, flown down specifically for this. And the fact that I admire most about him is the fact that he believes in an inclusive, democratic, pluralistic idea of India. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please put your hands together for R Gopalakrishnan. Let me start, sir, by asking you, sir, in a world changing hobbies and passions, you've been in the corporate world for now 55 years and you've held many distinguished positions across. You stuck to one thing, whilst most of us grapple with deciding what to do in life. It's very difficult for us to stick to one thing, even for the likes of those who are millennials and for most of my friends, I see them struggle with the fact that they need to pursue one thing forever.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you, Chairman. It's a great pleasure to be here. And you are contributing to my agenda because my agenda is every year I must talk to 10,000 people face to face, young people. मेरे पास और कोई काम नहीं, बच्चों के साथ बात करना ही मेरा काम है. Coming to your question, it's not this or that. It is this and that. You have to find what gives you pleasure. Because if you think of a job or starting a business or becoming a musician or whatever, it is not that you tried Hindustani music, Carnatic music, etc. It is what gives you fulfillment. And I think of this world as the sky. The sky has 8 billion slots of different shapes. And we are 8 billion human beings. All of us in this room, plus another so many billion. And we are all Brahman kar rahe hain. We are all घूम रहे हैं वहां पे, trying to find a slot which fits our shape and size. So there is no right or wrong. I have not stuck to one job. I have changed 2 jobs. But I stuck to one wife. And I'm not unhappy about it. No. If I have to, I'm not going to offer you advice. But you have to work hard at sticking with the thing that gives you fulfillment.
So it is okay for one to dabble in many things before finding your passion and your calling.
At this age, it's wonderful, in my view, to experiment and try, especially if you're in a family where you're not required to work day after tomorrow. And find your own awqat. हर एक की अपनी अपनी औकात होती है. And you find your own awqat.
There are many people who are aspiring to start their own business. There will be many who will start their own business in due course of time. You have advised, you have led many businesses. Today, it's the day and age of Shark Tank. And it is the day and age of valuation versus value creation. I personally think that there is a small difference between the two.
Big difference.
But I would like to learn more from you the difference between sharks in tanks and then there are whales in oceans, as I call them. And you, sir, have been a whale in the ocean. But to a 17-year-old who is starting out afresh, who does not come from lineage, who does not come from privilege, it's all well and good to say that pay attention to value creation. But for the person in question, valuation would also perhaps be as important. Or do you think that the aim should be value creation over valuation? What is your advice to a 16 or a 17-year-old who wants to start out in the field of business?
Well, firstly, we are very fortunate in our country that we have an environment in the last 20 years has gradually improved. An environment where young people can get finance, get advice. There are associations and bodies that teach you how to be an entrepreneur. So, I'm glad you asked this question. I always hesitate to tell young people कि तुमको ऐसा करना चाहिए, वैसा करना चाहिए. But I can tell you from my experience that nothing in life is achieved without commitment to values. And if you're starting, India desperately needs enterprise. By the way, I think one of our shortcomings, I will not call it failing, since independence, it is not a question of this party or that party, I'm not talking politics here, is we have failed to create an enterprise-friendly culture. Every government has said, I have created it, but that's not true. An enterprise-friendly culture expects to assign a role to enterprise. So the first lesson I have learned, which I would like to share with you, is why are you starting a company? You must start a company when you have some some intention of how to serve humanity. If you don't have enough enterprise in this country, you will not generate the taxes. If you don't generate the taxes, you will not have the money to spend on educational institutions, social, cultural, and then you go into a taste. That's been one of during my life, my observations. So when you start an enterprise, think of why you want to start an enterprise. I call this niyat. What is your niyat? Why are you? Is it just to just start another bottle banana here, both bottle ले रहे हैं, चलो हम भी bottle बना लेते हैं. Then you will get into this valuation chakra. The second thing that I would say early on, you have to do an enterprise is to set up niti. What is the way of behavior? इंसानियत होना चाहिए. Many people think they are founders and they are chasing valuation. And then you see in the newspaper some of the stories. That's not the way to do enterprise. If you have good niyat, you have good niti, then you must have good niyam. So I call this the 3N formula. आप लोग बच्चे हो तो this N 3N formula, 4P formula आप लोगों को पसंद होगा. If you don't have, just like if you're raising a child in a family, you can't say, oh, यार बाद में दिखा देंगे news. Doesn't work. Right from the time the child is a baby, the mother and the father and the uncle and grandfather will invest time in imparting values. They may not be perfectly successful, but they will teach them the values of truth, honesty. They may become big and do something else. That's a separate matter. But I'm saying that the parents try to do that. And you must treat your enterprise, if you're a startup, like a baby. Treat it with the same niyat, niti, and niyam.
The environment that we place ourselves in, essentially, we become the sum total of that environment, is what I believe. So, is this belief correct? And if it is, then how large a role does educational institutions and your friend circle play in shaping who you become in the future?
You know, you're almost the way you're framing your question gives the impression that you're a Katputri. You're put into one Vatavaran and everything is shaping you. But you're also shaping that. So I think it's very important to notice the type of interaction you're having with your environment. My greatest inspiration and influence has not been some famous man. If you ask me, I won't say Mahatma Gandhi, but I never met him. Even if I meet him, it will be for 5 minutes. Though Gandhiji died soon after I was born, though the two events are not related. I think you get inspiration from big leaders. Gandhiji, Abraham Lincoln, Vallabhbhai Patel. But you get instruction from your father, your mother, your uncle, your grandfather. So I have found that whereas I used to look for inspiration by reading big people, and that's a good thing to do, I'm not against it, you will never get instruction from that. Instruction you get by observing your father, your brother, your sister, your uncle, and an occasion like this. What is good about this is you're exposed to a number of people whom you didn't know before you walked in here this morning. And I think you have to be influenced both by inspiration and instruction. What you should be looking for is, am I adaptable? Adaptable doesn't mean कि रंग बदलते रहो. एक दिन डॉक्टर बन गया, एक दिन साइकोलॉजिस्ट बन गया, एक दिन cricketer बन गया. That's not what I mean by adaptable. Whatever you're good at. So I studied electronics engineering. I started as a computer engineer when there was no computer. I mean, there were 2 computers in India. And I had to adapt in a company which said, if you don't touch the sweating shoulders of the people who work in this company's factories and sales, marketing, you cannot become their leader. मुझे धक्का लगा. मैं तो IIT से आया था. मैं कुछ super intelligent बंदा था. So they sent me off to work as a salesman. Where? In Nagpur, Igatpuri, Shirdi. And there was no van in those days. This van and all has come just now. एक बैलगाड़ी लेके जाते थे, उसमें डालडा साबुन वगैरह. You spend your whole day talking to retailers. And you say, Agarwal ji, आज क्या लेंगे, 10 पेटी लेंगे. People thought this is a lousy job to do. But I learned more from those Agarwal jis about business than I would have learned from any books. Because Agarwal ji is doing the real stuff. You know? कहाँ से पैसे आते हैं, कहाँ से जाते हैं, keeps track of it. So my suggestion is, look for inspiration from famous people, look for instruction from people who are close to you, and see what you can learn from any person. Even Agarwal ji could teach me something. And I'm very respectful of that. I can tell you many stories of what the Agarwal... I'm using Agarwal ji. Please don't mistake me if there's an Agarwal sitting in this group. I'm using it as a mnemonic for a trader and a retailer. I'm not saying this in any bad way. But there are many stories that I've learned. Adaptable. All of you think of your own domestic situation. You're unlike to have a room to yourself with the... Is it working? Yeah. You're unlikely to be having a room to yourself. And if you do have one, when uncle or auntie or papa's friends come, you're kicked out of your room, you'll sleep in the hall. Correct? How many of you have not had that experience? He's putting his hand right up. Yeah. So be adaptable. Hamara kamra, hamara bathroom is hum logon ka. So when I remember when I was a kid, suddenly I'll be told, firstly I was sharing the room with two of my brothers, so 3 of us were there. And whenever some uncle came, we would go to the hall. That is another form of adaptability. The third, cuisine. So I would take my lunch dabba to school. I had an idli or a dosa. The other fellow had an aloo paratha or a thepla. I said, what the hell is that? I never heard of thepla in my life. I'm talking of that time. And then you start to eat other people's food. Now, the forms of adaptability that you are exposed to, you are not conscious of. I'm telling you all this, you say, yeah, so what's so great about it? But it is that adaptability that is a unique gene. You ask, what can children learn from it? My answer is, be more and more adaptable. Be open to many ideas. There is no single way to do anything. Don't pack things. You know, there is no chauvinism that Tamil food is better than Gujarati food. You know, if you like it, have it. I love Sindhi curry. I live in Bombay. I like tum. But I don't get that in Calcutta. But when I go to Calcutta, I will get begun bhara and so on and so forth. Adaptability of language, of space, of cuisine, and many other forms of adaptability that Indians grow up with without being conscious of.
But what is your idea of India that you would like to see in 2047 that they should build and bring about?
I don't want to take 2047 too literally because that's the politician's prerogative. वो कुछ बोलेंगे. I don't believe everything politicians say, neither should you. वो अपने काम करने के लिए बोल देते हैं कुछ. This is not a reflection on anybody, but he has to get his job done, so he has to get elected. But if I look at the next, you people must be 18, 20, the age group here, even younger. So you'll be around 50 years from now. I won't be around. But when you're my age, you will, hopefully, I want you to think that एक दिन गए थे वो भाई भी जवान में, एक बुढ़ा आदमी बैठ के मोहन बोला, we will be a developed nation. Far more developed than today. Whether we be like Sweden or I don't know. The fact of the matter is this. This is a Kala Chakra. You may take credit for it. I'm BJP, I'm Congress, I'm somebody else. That's a separate state show. If you go back to approximately 1800, let's say, a round number, we were the developed nation. This is well known. I hope to young people, I want you to know that जो अमानत आपने खोया है, वो आहिस्ता आहिस्ता आपके पास वापस आ. So the US people said, अरे यार एक तो एक चांद भेज दिया, दूसरा इतने सस्ते कैसे किया? Came and said, Mr. ISRO chairman, congratulations that you sent your rocket to the moon. How do you do it so cheap for 700? And he looked at him and he said, I cannot answer that question But I want to know how you spent $4 billion. He said. So we have a frugal mindset of innovation. We can carry it to an extreme. This frugal mindset, adaptability, and all these things are going to take us in the direction that you have mentioned, whether it's 2047 or 2057, doesn't matter. It's your lifetime, for sure. And I'll be dead and gone, and many of us older people here, but please remember this. ये आपके जनरेशन का एक ये हक नहीं है, एक ऑनर है, that you're restoring back what India was 152 ago.
The wisdom that you've passed on is what will make the country a developed country, I hope. And the idea that you spoke about, which is that we're sitting on the cusp of history and we're hopefully going to go back to the glorious past, rewrite a lot of things, will only happen when we have people who essentially, and this is my firm belief, that we have people who are in all positions of power, who do little for themselves and more for society. You know Sanskrit, sir, definitely better than me, and which is why, but there's a Sanskrit shloka which basically says, Swasmai Swarupam Samajya Sarvaswam. It basically translates into do little for yourself and do a lot for society. There are very few people who do that, but we are very lucky and very blessed to be surrounded by very many of those. Today, we have the opportunity of hosting one such other individual. On behalf of everybody at IIMUN, thank you very much, sir, for spending it.